Mr. Calandra, would you like to just sort of say a few words to introduce yourself? And I'm sure everybody here knows who you are.
Yeah, no, look, I'll be very brief, Karen. Just thank you for hosting, and yeah, hopefully Prab is able to get online. He's doing the news conference with the Premier today. But look, I'll just be very short, just to say thank you for everything that that everybody's doing. I know everybody's probably getting a little bit frustrated by this point. Everybody has done an exceptionally good job. Not just in Stouffville, but throughout the province of Ontario. We've been able to flatten the curve, but I do appreciate how at this particular point in time, people want to, as best as possible, try to get back to normal, but we're still obviously not quite there yet. I know in my own circumstances, my kids are going stir crazy in the house, and there's just so much. There's all good parenting has gone out the door. They are on their phones and computers and on Netflix, and so it is what it is. But look, I thank everybody for everything they've done. Stouffville's done a pretty good job, I have to say. Out and about, you know, people have been home for the most part. The last couple of days, you're starting to see a little bit more people getting out and about a little bit. See, Sonia Torres is on the line. I know that she managed somehow to sell a house 2 doors down from me. But these are the as my wife said, it's like a good golf shot every once in a while. It makes you feel good, but there's still a long way to go. So I think I'll just leave it at that, guys, and I'll get as many questions in as possible, Karen, if that's okay.
Okay, so we've surveyed a lot of our members, and there have been a lot of questions that came in. We've tried to consolidate them into an organized fashion, which we'll run through, and hopefully you'll be able to shed some light on that. The first one, and the most pressing one that we're hearing lately, is on rent relief for small businesses. Rent subsidies have been given to commercial landlords as an option, but in many cases are not or can't take advantage of it. For example, landlords who are mortgage-free, tenants who exceed threshold, which is leaving small businesses still scrambling to try and pay their rent when their business is closed and has reduced revenue. What more can be done to directly support small businesses with rent? And are there any revisions forthcoming to the original subsidy that was announced?
Yeah, so it just opened up today, the program. The original program that was announced is different from the program that you're seeing today, but I suspect there's still a little bit of work that's going to need to be done on it. Landlords without mortgages, for instance, they'll be able to apply to this. But look, truthfully, I have heard in my office a lot of tenants who are worried that their landlord is not going to participate in this, and this is something that we have been, not just the province of Ontario, but a number of other provinces have been stressing this particular point with the federal government. It's a federal program that we're participating in. To the tune of about 25%. That's not to suggest that the federal government isn't listening. I just want to premise everything I'm saying today that there has been an unprecedented level of cooperation from really all levels of government, and in a lot of instances we're pulling out programs and then having to go back and modify them and fix them a little bit. But this one in particular is causing a lot of stress for tenants who are hearing from landlords that they are just not going to participate for one reason or another. It is something that we, as I said, we are pushing the federal government on to look at different ways of supporting the tenants, the commercial tenant directly. And we are preparing, if need be, a provincial backstop if we can't get appropriate changes. But I don't want to leave the illusion out there, and not sound like a broken record, that they aren't listening. They brought a program out as quickly as they possibly could. They've got participation broadly in from all of the provinces, and have been receptive to making changes on the programs. And I hope this was one that they will change. Just giving the amount of calls I've gotten from Stouffville tenants over the last.
When you're talking about backstops, do you have any sort of timing on when that would take effect?
Yeah. So, well, look, our immediate hope is that we can convince the federal government not to put more money into it. I don't think that's really the issue. It's just how the funds are utilized. So it's really just a change in how you deliver the funds, either to the landlord or to the tenant. If we keep hearing that landlords, aren't participating, then the provincial government has other options at its disposal. We can do emergency orders that forbid landlords from locking out tenants, or we can provide different financial support for tenants as well. But I think today you'll start to see, I'm hoping that today, that once the landlords are able to take a look at the program, see the modifications that have been made, that more of them will decide to participate than had been before. But it is something I'm keenly aware of. I will say this: there have been many calls from Stouffville and Markham tenants who are worried about this. It's not people trying to get out of paying rent.
No.
And we force them closed. They can't sell. They can't do business. They can't make ends meet, and they want to be ready when we start to open up. They just need a little bit more time, and we will fix it. I certainly have no desire to keep driving down any part of Stouffville on my way to Queen's Park and seeing businesses leave because of a program application that just wasn't done in a fashion that gets the money to the tenants. So very soon, Karen, it's I suspect you'll see some more movement on the federal government's side of this very soon. Okay.
Okay. And then I think the majority of the next questions that we've been receiving are all around reopening. And I know there was a big announcement yesterday. A lot of things are loosening up, and the government is starting to, or the provincial government's allowing us certain businesses to reopen, keeping social distancing obviously in mind, and also having to also put in protective measures to keep their staff and customers safe. Will the provincial government consider to reopen everything as a province, or will it consider opening up different regions based on the amount of cases of COVID-19 and the risk to the public? Or is it going to be continue to be a whole province kind of reopening strategy?
Yeah, so it will be a province-wide reopening strategy. We did look, and there was a lot of debate about this at provincial cabinet. In particular, a lot of rural parts of the province have not had any cases at all of COVID-19 and are anxious to get back moving. And the challenge that we've had is when we looked at other jurisdictions that opened up in this fashion or closed down in this fashion, we saw people flee the closed areas to areas that were open. And then we saw that the supply chain started to get horrifyingly disrupted because of the unequal nature of how it was open. So we are in a spot right now where it will be province-wide, it will be very systematic, but we are in a good spot right now because of how good people have done in staying home, in isolating, and in physical distancing, that the numbers have been going in a really good direction. So we will start now in the next a little bit. We will separate out cases of COVID that are in nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and conjugate care facilities, and those that are in the community. And I think those numbers will highlight that right now, our main focus has to be on long-term care retirement homes, but in the community, people have been doing a good job, and we will be able to start opening up province-wide in unison. So it was a big battle. I will say this, early on, it was a very, very difficult challenge to get some cabinet ministers, some members of parliament who are in rural areas to support those of us who are in more urban areas that had a lot of cases and potential for really big outbreaks to come down. But they have, and that's why we're in the spot we're in. So province-wide at the same time, and these next 2 weeks are absolutely critical to entering then the second phase and ultimately the third phase.
Thank you for that. And on that point of reopening, everything is being announced bit by bit. Is there any way that the government can provide us with what the next stage is? I know that you can't necessarily give us a timeline, but it would really help businesses if they knew that they were next in line to be able to open so that they could prepare for it and get their staff ready.
Yeah, so the Minister of Labor has been working with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and what we're doing is we have guidance. We're putting in place guidance for businesses that will be allowed to open up. So once we have that guidance in place, then we bring it to the Open for Business command table as such, and we go by case basis. But all of those businesses that right now that are in the phase one and allowed to reopen, those are ones that we know for sure, or not for sure, but can provide physical distancing. They can have access to PPE. So that's why you're seeing small businesses with street side, with storefronts that face the street side, allowing them to do curbside delivery. The next stage, assuming that this stage goes well, and I'm an optimist, so I believe that this next stage will go well. As early as 2 weeks from Tuesday, we might be able to go into the second stage, and the second stage is where you'll start to see hairdressers open, dentist offices, and people who work a bit more closely, but still following social distancing or physical distancing parameters that will be put in place and guidelines that will be put in place. And then 2 to 4 weeks after that, you'll then move into a different phase, which is the third phase, which you're talking restaurants and how many people you can have in a restaurant, perhaps a bit more gathering, larger gatherings. It's hard for us to give a precise date and timeline because it really, I can't stress this enough. This next 2 weeks is absolutely vital to moving forward. As we start to open up, if we continue to see that curve stay where it's at, where it's been the last number of days, then we will be in a good spot. The other thing I will say this is, Karen, is part of the slow pace at which we're doing things is to ensure that there is appropriate PPE in place for those businesses that will need it. And in the short term, we still feel that the focus has to be on long-term care, healthcare on that side, but we are in a spot where we could open up some businesses because we have some surplus, but as we are comfortable with the supply, then you'll start to see more aggressive opening. I know that's not a comfort to anybody who's paying a lot of rent, who has a lot of people at home and who hasn't been able to sell or do things, especially restaurants. We're hearing a lot of restaurants are very, very, very nervous. But they are also working hard and giving us guidelines on how they can do it. So we do encourage that as well. So next 2 weeks, hugely important, goes well. Then we'll enter stage 2 within 2 weeks. That last 2 to 4 weeks, that goes well. Then we'll be in the final stage. The ultimate stage where everybody would like to get back was the pre-COVID. Well, that's a bit far off. So huge stadiums full of people. That's a long way off.
Okay, so when you mentioned supply chain for PPE, and where are we at with that, and how can we ensure that as things are opening up, that PPE is readily available for not only the businesses, but also for the customers?
Yeah, so we're in a pretty good spot right now. We have a very good supply for the healthcare sector. And we're able to supply most needs for health, for hospitals, long-term care, retirement homes, and other conjugate care facilities on a daily basis. So they have their needs. Long-term, we are no longer going to be relying on anybody else to provide us PPE. So we are shifting as aggressively as we possibly can to supporting those manufacturers that will manufacture all of our PPE in the province of Ontario. We will be, we're working closely with the federal government on this and with other provinces. Obviously, Ontario has a huge manufacturing base, So we will not be shy, and the other provinces, again, working with us, we will be able to, we hope, be in a position to supply the entire country internally all its PPE out of sources from Ontario, and that's the only way we are going to solve this going forward. To say we're in a good spot right now, but my gosh, the last couple of months have been, like, I'm sure everybody knows somebody now who sells PPE. It's been extraordinary, the amount of sales pitches we've had, and all in good faith. But what's been happening a lot of the times is foreign governments will then seize the shipment at the airport and not let it come leave their country, or it just doesn't arrive, or the quality of the product is horrifying. So we've just decided enough of that. We will retool Canadian industries, and we will guarantee them. The other problem that we have, and I'll just say this, is we are in the process of transitioning in Ontario to what was called Ontario Health Teams. So right now, all of our hospitals have somebody who goes out and buys PPE, all the protective. So they were competing with each other in the beginning. Our long-term care homes were doing the same thing, and we were in the process of transitioning to a one supplier. So the province would be purchasing all of the PPE across the board. That's why Alberta has not had the same problems that other provinces have had, because they transitioned a long time ago into the single supplier. So that's what we're going to do. So right now, short term, we're in a good spot. We don't have enough to cover all of the businesses that would like to be open, obviously. Healthcare is good. Long-term, internal access, and internal companies doing it. So anybody who's in that in Stouffville and wants to look at transitioning some of their product lines, we will listen and we will support.
Absolutely, thank you. Has there been any consideration to making wearing face shields or protective face coverings mandatory when people are out in public?
Yeah, we've heard a lot about this. There's been a lot of discussion around this, and initially the Chief Medical Officer of Health, both Canada and in the provinces, were of the mindset that it wouldn't have a huge impact. Recently, they've said as public transportation comes up, it might be advisable for people in crowded public transportation to be wearing face masks. It is not something that we are, it's on the table right now to order people to do it. I think by and large, a lot of people, when I'm out and about, have made the decision to just wear it on their own. I don't, but it's not a statement of any way, shape, or form. It's just, I just don't, I haven't done it. And the provincial government is not at this point considering making it mandatory.
Okay, and what about testing? Is it correct that now everybody that is showing symptoms of COVID-19 that they can be tested?
Yeah, we really ramped up testing a lot. We were very slow on this, admittedly. It took us a while to get to a good spot where we're at. We're almost finished now. I think actually by this weekend, we will be done all of the long-term care homes in the province of Ontario. So they will all have been tested at least once. And we are now in a position where if you have symptoms, you should be able to get a test in the province of Ontario at the facilities. I know Markham Stouffville Hospital has testing. We've seen that local requests for testing has come down quite a bit. But yes, we want to be in a position, because ultimately, in jurisdictions where there has been a success, the increase in testing has allowed them to open up their businesses much quicker. So we have to be in a spot where we're doing a lot of testing, getting results much quicker, so that we can avoid any future outbreak if possible. So if you feel it, you should be able to get tested in the province of Ontario now.
Fair enough. Beyond the guidelines that were published by the province on April 30th, which was Health and Safety Association guidance documents for workplace during COVID-19 outbreak, are there any further adjustments that need to be made by workspaces before people can return to work and reopen safely?
Yeah, we're working with a lot of industry specifically they're reaching out for obvious reasons, to tell us how they think that they can open up and provide the physical distancing. So a lot of the industrial actors are doing this on their own, and the Ministry of Labor is taking their recommendations, and we are bringing that to the Chief Medical Officer of Health for approval. There will be lots of changes. I guess the one frustrating thing, I wouldn't say frustrating, the one part of this is as we open up, there could be changes all the time. And until we have a vaccine, this is going to be changing and shifting often. We might find that some sectors have to be brought down, closed down again after we've opened them up, or that the protections that we put in place initially just weren't enough. So ultimately what we're asking is chambers, like you did in the Great Recession of 2008, work with us, have your partners tell us what they think they can do, and we will send that to the Chief Medical Officer of Health for a decision of whether that is enough to protect people who come in and visit. Look, you have a former insurance broker who's trying to look at some of these things, and I don't know what it takes to make a Boston pizza safe for people, but we will take the advice and bring it back to Chief Medical Officer of Health. But nobody should be under the illusion that what happens today or over the next 2 weeks is the reality that they will be living in or selling in or doing business in a month from now. It will unfortunately be constantly changing, and that I think will be the biggest irritation for a lot of people, is outside of all of the red tape that we already foist on you, your rules will be changing for how you do business.
Fair enough. One of the challenges to restarting the economy and opening more businesses will be childcare services for working parents. Mm-hmm. Even if schools were to open for a short period, the months of June, July, and August will be a challenge for many families to have their children cared for. The providers of children's activities, such as dance schools, have been mandated to be closed since the March break, and without any source of income at a critical time in their business sector. Provided that these business sectors can adhere to current public health guidelines, will the government permit these businesses to open and provide additional childcare options, such as day camps, for many families relying on them for the summer?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where if the Premier was asked this question, he'd say, make sure you're watching me over the next day or two. So I'll leave it at that. Make sure you're watching over the next day or two. We do recognize that as we bring more businesses online, both like GoTrain, we're gonna have to start picking up the GoTrain service, but ultimately childcare. We just simply cannot ask people to get back to work or businesses to get moving again unless we have childcare options for them. And what we are hearing a lot of too is that that some form of consistency would be good for younger people at this point in time. So it is something that we are working on very, very, very diligently. So I'm looking specifically at Tom and Lee. I know you guys are probably working on how your summer would look like, and the provincial government is wanting you to be a success so that everybody else can also get back to it. So there is some more news coming on that. I just don't want to preempt.
And am I correct to assume at that same time there'll be more news forthcoming on schooling in general?
100%. So we will try to make it very clear over the next couple of days what the balance of the school year will look like, what we might look like towards the beginning of the next year, and how we can somehow get kids out and about over the summer doing the types of things that they are used to doing. In a way that doesn't compromise. So that's a very political answer because I'm trying not to say something that's...
You're skating.
That's so yeah, I'm thinking around. Watch TV over the next couple of days if you would, but I think we're in a bit more comfortable spot than they are right now.
Okay, the next set of questions, and I'm gonna try and get through these, and maybe we'll have time on the back end for some open form questions if people have any. is there any additional funding that you are aware of that is forthcoming to support small businesses that have started up in the last year? If so, can you share any details and timing on that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not aware of anything at this point. I will just double check and have to get back to you on that. I'm not aware of anything. What we've been trying to do is the provincial government has been almost exclusively focused on the healthcare side of it, and the federal government has been focused on transfers to individuals and to people. And in the short term, it's been really just how do we get people through 4 months. That's not to say, though, that we haven't learned a lot of lessons from the crisis of 2008. And one of the reasons why we came out of 2008 so well was two things. A is, and I said this at the Markham, with my Markham meetup, chambers of commerce, whether people know it or not, but chambers of commerce across the country in 2008 literally wrote Canada's economic action plan. So the plan that the government, the Harper government that I was a part of enacted was in essence written by chambers of commerce. It was, reduce red tape, provide funding in certain sectors, and Canada did very well. So we will need the chambers to continue to do that. We will absolutely, I'm very confident in saying this, that the government federally and provincially will have to find ways to support small, medium, and even large job creators for quite some time. Even as the economy starts to open up, it is going to be a challenge, especially Canada. One of the reasons why we want to open up is we don't want Ontario businesses to be left out of the supply chain. Other jurisdictions will move to other suppliers if we're not a part of that. So we are prepared to support our businesses so they can stay in the supply chain, and there will be more to come. Short term, it's healthcare, getting people up and running. Long term, it will have to be supports for small, medium, and large job creators, learning some of the lessons that we did from 2008 and 9. And the big thing that's why, and I wish Minister Sarkaria was here, the red tape side of it is something that we hear constantly about. And as quick as we're going to try and alleviate you of red tape, we still are overly regulated in this province, twice as much as our nearest competitor in British Columbia. So as much as we've done a lot of work, I think we have 368,000 regulations. They have less than 200,000. They're like 168,000 regulations, and it's the #1 stumbling block. And I promise, I'll just say this and I'll shorten my answers. One of the things that we're recognizing from this is when you look at, I don't want to say good things that come out of crisis because there's nothing good about this, but you recognize things that can be done. So the shift to online, whether it's the government moving quickly online to register businesses online actions that can be done in the court system. So government providing more things online and making it easier has been extraordinarily well received by people. I know Councillor Upton, I've been told that online council meetings have been better attended than regular council meetings. So his mic is muted, so he can't say anything about it. But so we are seeing a lot of things that we can do. But yes, long answer just to say yes, 100%. There will be more supports coming. And we have a committee of the legislature that is starting its work next week to find those very things. What regulations can we get out of the way right away, and what supports are needed to get going? And the other, this I promise is last. When you look at where we will be hit the most, you look at our cultural industries, you look at tourism, transportation. These are sectors that are worth billions of dollars. The film, TV, and movie industry for the province of Ontario. These are hundreds of thousands of dollars, billions of dollars in economic activity. And if we don't get out of the way and get moving pretty quickly, we're going to be in trouble for a long period of time.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Moving on, many businesses we've heard that many of the businesses that purchased business interruption insurance with their recent with the recent claims being denied. In most cases, this is because the damage to the facility is not considered physical. Additionally, insurers are claiming that in the absence of specific outbreaks in businesses, the mandated closures are not the result of an event that is covered by the business interruption insurance. Most small business owners with this coverage do not have the financial means to sue their insurance companies at this time. Is the government prepared to address the insurance industry and their unwillingness to consider claims related to the coronavirus, despite them having sold policies that were intended to protect businesses in the event that they are forced to close and do not specifically exclude the pandemic?
Yeah, short answer is yes. This has been something that has, for lack of a better word, has pissed us off to no end. Whether it's and I'm a former insurance broker, so I feel like, when you say something about yourself, you can say you get away with it because you were one of them. I was a former insurance broker, and people, these are expensive policies too, and people expect it to be there for them, and so whether it's business interruption, whether it's the reduction in premiums because of the lack of accidents, the transition to online services that we're doing, we expect the insurance companies, and we'll be moving quickly. Minister Phillips has already indicated this, that we are going to be moving quickly on some of these items. Look, the government is there. We're supposed to be there, and we're the backstop. We help support as best we can, but people also pay for expensive policies, and I don't think it's too much to ask that what they pay for, they should be able to access. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Businesses are required to pay fees to the bank and credit card companies for every transaction made. Many businesses have opted to move to a cashless payment system for the safety of employees and the public. Is there anything that the provincial government can do to help reduce these fees during this time?
It's a challenging one because most of that regulation happens at the federal government and through the Banking Act review. We have asked that our rates for our small businesses, the transaction rates, be reduced. We have asked for the banks to reduce credit card rates. This is something that the Standing Committee on Finance provincially will be looking at as well immediately over the summer, but it is something that that honestly is regulated through the federal government. I don't want to be a cop-out. I know it's pretty expensive to do it, so yes, we are looking at it, and I suspect when some of the financial results, the quarterly financials come out from some of these people, might be even more aggressive in their desires to see some of the changes. And the reality is too, look, this is going to go on for a long period of time. Like, people aren't just automatically now going to get back and start going to the bank and pulling out cash and paying. This is going to be the new normal. We could be in this situation again in next November, next December. So one of the things that we are going to be doing is moving very quickly to look at things like that, like business interruption, like the other emergency orders we put in place, and what we can do very quickly should this happen again 2 or 3 months from now. But yes.
All right, thank you for that. Then there was a question with regard to the $4 increase for healthcare workers has been announced, but no information provided on how the funding process will work. Are employers required to fund and get reimbursed, or is the government funding employees directly? How is that working?
Yeah, so most of these are the sectors that we're supporting right now, and more are coming online. Most of them are public sector employees as such. So that was, again, it's one of these programs that we have announced, and money is starting to flow on that from both the federal government. So we're splitting the cost of it. Federal is $2, and we are $2. So look, I'd be lying to you if I tell you I know the exact makeup of that program. I suspect there will be retroactive pay, and it'll come from us to the registered employer.
Okay, so the
The
employer will
employer
pay and then it'll
would
be
apply for it, and we would offset the cost directly.
fair enough. Is it true that the nurses with a designation do not qualify for this increase? And if so, why are they not included?
I'm not aware of that. So when the people that are, there have been some inconsistencies with who's getting it and who's not getting it. So what we do is we turn to the associations. The initial thrust was, okay, who is in the line of who could more quickly contract it for, as such. So are there some nurses who are working in certain areas that require it right away? If you're working in an ICU, obviously you would need it quicker than a nurse who's working in another area. So initially we relied on the particular associations, healthcare associations, to tell us which are the people within your industries that require it. But we've been hearing a lot from other people, and then the more you look into it, you know, the more you feel that, okay, that group should actually be getting it. So, you organize the program, and then you realize that more people should be getting it. So, you know, the maintenance person who cleans the ICU, should they be getting it? Well, you know, probably. Initially, it didn't include paramedics because they aren't provincial employees. So that had to be changed. So there may be some areas that are not getting it. Which ones they are, I do not know. But if they apply to the Ministry of Health, it will be reviewed, and we're not looking at avoiding paying people or providing support for people, but we do take our advice from the healthcare providers themselves as to who should be getting it, and then we fund those who they tell us should be getting it.
Fair enough, thank you. With regards to the provincial budget and taxes, you know, there's a lot of money that's being shelled out. Is there any forecast as to how COVID-19 government spending will impact the provincial government and impact the future business taxes, i.e. the money they are handing out has to be paid for by whom? And is the government currently considering tax increases? If so, are we looking personal? Are we looking corporate? Any idea of how we're going to finance all of this?
Yeah, well, you're financing it, really.
Actually,
We're
it's
all
my
paying
son.
for this. This is one that keeps it really keeps me up at night. This is a very, very difficult one, right? So the provincial government is forecast to have a deficit in and around the $40 to $45 billion mark this year, which is a combination of lost revenue and financial support that we're giving out. So that would be an increase of debt to GDP of about up to about 45%. The federal government is forecasting a $280 billion deficit, and like us, their revenues are plummeting. Other provincial governments, Newfoundland is on the verge of bankruptcy right now. So the federal government's going to have a role to play in this, and they've really done their job. So where will Ontario be? Look, Ontario is going to have to do, there's a number of things that we have to do. We have to put more money and resources into long-term care. I don't think anybody would accept the status quo in long-term care. We have to put money and supports into building the transit system that we promised we would do, including subways. We can't allow the important infrastructure things that we need to get done to stop. But at the same time, you're in a spot where I don't think people can really afford for us to increase their taxes. I don't know of any small business right now that could withstand a tax increase of any kind right now. If anything, they need more help to get the economy going. So Minister Phillips will have a very, very comprehensive budget in the fall. I don't suspect that we're looking at tax increases of any kind, because I just don't think anybody could pay for it. And we do have to make some investments. So this will be a very, very challenging time for governments. I expect, if I'm being honest, not giving you a political answer, I expect that the deficit projections that the return to balance won't be as quickly as we would have liked it to have been. but there has to be a recognition of the fact that our governments can only borrow so much money. So at some point in time, you either have to look at the expenditures or at taxes, or both. But I'm very confident to say that there is not going to be any tax increases on small, medium, and large job creators anytime soon, and let alone and on individuals. Like these are it's been pretty tough for a lot of people. I always say you kind of feel guilty. Like I still get an income every once a month. The government sends me a check for doing my job. And you know, when I go line up at Walmart, I feel always kind of guilty because I know I'm still getting paid. And there's a lot of people there that have gone down to $2,000 a month or less. Others who are still keeping employees. I have one guy, he's keeping his employees. He's still paying his employees by literally emptying out his savings account to do it. I mean, the stories are just, they're horrifying. And we could be in a spot again in a few months where this happens again, right? So I see Minister Sarkaria has joined us, so I'm going to let him speak. But I look, I'm a fiscal conservative. I want to see balanced budgets. I want to see proper investments made. But I also recognize that in this particular era, we can't ask you to pay any more than you have been. So, Prabha, there was just a question on taxes and the budget. I said that you would be increasing taxes unilaterally. I would fact. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Paul. I think that's the good thing about having someone like a good fiscal hawk like Paul at Queen's Park is to ensure that would never happen. I think Paul has always been a strong advocate of a free and open economy and making sure that we support our businesses through smarter both regulation and smarter tax policy. So I do want to just start off by the top, apologizing for being a bit late. I know we were scheduled for 1 o'clock, and I unfortunately was scheduled last minute for a press conference with the Premier. But really wanted we'll loop back with Paul. I had a great opportunity over the last couple of weeks to engage with Paul directly on some local small business issues across your region, across your area. So I'm very much working hand in hand with Paul, and he's been great facilitating that dialogue and representing those concerns and needs of small businesses across the province. But there's also a good opportunity for us as we look to the future, as we look towards the next phase, not just weathering the storm, but how are we going to get through this and how are we going to come out even stronger, to listen to our small business owners on how we can help them do that, whether it's through the regulatory lens or whether it's through future policies and initiatives that this government will undertake to better support small business owners across the province. So I'll let the discussion continue, and where I can add, I would love to, and then I will then follow up with Paul on some of the discussion items from today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. We're now through the majority of our questions. We're going to open it up so that we have a few minutes for people to ask questions. If we can start with Steve Warlock, he's indicated in the chat that he had a question. So if you can unmute Steve Warlock, he had a follow-up question with regards to the rent.
Hi, I unmuted myself.
Oh, good. Better.
So I don't know, what I heard is that there were some new announcements today about the rent initiative. I haven't seen those, so I don't know if those really help us, but maybe I should wait until I've seen what's come out. But there are a lot of questions about it, and landlords are getting a lot of pressure from tenants, and landlords really don't know what to do. We don't know if there are multi-tenanted buildings, whether the landlord has to opt in for all of the tenants. We don't know what to do with tenants whose revenue exceeds the threshold. Perhaps today we've resolved what we do with landlords who don't have a mortgage on their building. And one of the things that concerned me was there's conditions that the tenant is required to comply with. I don't know whether it's the landlord that has to, that is on the hook for those conditions being satisfied, or so I guess I just don't know where we're at. Tenants are hearing that there's an initiative, but there isn't anything concrete for landlords to act upon. And I'm just wondering whether this is going to be resolved before the next rent due date on June 1st.
Yeah, so as I said, I know the one aspect of it is that you briefly touched on that landlords without mortgages, they'll be allowed to apply to this program, whereas before they were not allowed to apply. And probably correct me if I'm wrong, but the program actually opened up today. If I'm not
it was supposed to open up today, but now it's being pushed to next week. So it was supposed to, and we just got note of it. So it's a program that we've invested about $200 million as a province into. It's a program that's being led by the federal government, and like we've done in the past, we'll work with them. And Steve, from the points that you brought up are exactly what are some of the points that we've been forwarding over to their offices to get more of that certainty aspect of it. So whereas this is a program across Canada, it did require provincial buy-in. But I think the most important part of it has been, through our having these type of roundtables and town halls, we're able to take feedback directly to those federal partners and say that this is what we're hearing, and let's see how we can work on it. It's being administered by the CMHC primarily. But we wanted to maybe potentially see this get up and running a bit quicker. It was supposed to launch today. It's going to launch next week. And as Paul confirmed, the mortgage aspect has been solved. There's been issues around gross lease versus other mechanisms. And so we are all still waiting some final word from the federal government on those aspects of the program. And I would also say that if they do not have the 70% income threshold, and you do have multiple units within that building, then only those units that have met the criteria for the program are the ones that would be eligible for it as of today, and how the program is constructed. But that's very helpful for us, and we will definitely take that back to the federal working table on that as well.
Thank you. There's also another question with regards to rent, and so we'll move over to Tom and Lee.
Hi there. Just very briefly, I want to thank you both ministers for doing this. This has been wonderful, and to Paul, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
That was a birthday earlier this week.
Yeah.
So we actually wanted to ask on behalf of businesses who own the property that they operate in. So in essence, they're their own landlords. And I know that this impacts a number of us here on this chat. So although we're not paying to a third party or a separate company, obviously still have mortgages, taxes, maintenance, insurance, and those kinds of things. Do we anticipate that the rent relief is going to be extended to those businesses who are operating inside of buildings that they themselves own?
And fall under that income reduction threshold?
Yeah, yes.
You know what? I don't actually have a good answer. I was given that question yesterday by somebody who was explaining to me that he pays rent to the building which is owned by somebody else, and I hadn't even thought of that. That's why I'm government house leader, and I can shift things off to the Minister of Small Business.
No, that's actually a really good question.
I just heard it for the first time yesterday, to be honest.
To be honest, for whatever reason, I was on a roundtable in Barrie, and this came up, and we escalated it over to the Ministry of the federal working group that we have going on. And so this is, I wish I could have got the answer by today. I haven't gotten it, but that's definitely something we'll loop you in as soon as we get it. I do suspect that you would be able to, as long as there's two different entities, but we'll definitely confirm on that, because we've been able to have, we had some movement on the no mortgage aspect of it. And so I think this would just be a technicality that as the programs are developed, we would be able to kind of help you navigate through. So we'll definitely follow up. And as soon as I've already sent that question off, so we'll get some further clarification from either CMHC or the feds very quickly on that.
A question.
Thank you again, both.
Okay, sorry. A question that I have pertaining to it. you have to have more than 30% commercial in a building to qualify for the rent subsidies. If a building or an owner has a lot of residential, which they're trying to encourage commercial with residential in behind, they're limiting those ones that are applicable, so that if you've only got 25 or 28% commercial, you do not qualify, because there's a minimum of 30%, which again goes back onto the businesses that have been affected as opposed to the landlords. So they just automatically don't qualify. So I hope I made myself clear.
Yeah. Sorry, Prab, did you?
Yeah, no, we've heard that one as well, and that's something that, like, these are, so I think, sometimes what happened is I'd say a lot of the programs that have been developed very quickly on the federal side have been fairly, I could say, half-baked in some circumstances and not thought out fully with, some of these elements to it. I completely, you're right on that, David. We've seen many new developments in newer areas that are seeing that growth. Have that type of model where it's a residential with commercial mix, and so we got to see that there's no arbitrary reason for those type of properties to be left out. So we'll definitely convey that, and something that we're working to get more clarification on as well.
It's not the biggest program, but it's certainly been the most difficult one to get out the door and get done. It's
definitely.
Well, there hasn't been participation because there's too many questions out there that there's no answers to. So people don't apply to it because you look at it and down the road, you don't know what qualifies for, the 70%. What happens if 3 months down the road, they say, okay, well, they didn't qualify for the 70%. So all of a sudden you have to go back to your tenant and say, where we gave the consent, the government's not supporting the 50%. So you're now on, the business is now on the hook for the whole 100% that's been deferred. And at a time when, they may not be able to afford it because they thought that they had something to be done. And, how does the landlord know they have to get something from the tenant to say that they've lost 70% of their business. And, for like what we did before the close up in 25th of March for us, we phoned every one of our customers to come in that if they had anything here that we would be closing. So March we didn't have a problem with, and then April there was practically nothing. May we don't know about this opening up and how that's going to be treated. So 70% maybe, we may not be at 70%, we may be at 65 for March, but April we were practically zero.
Yeah, understandable. I think we have time for just one more question. I'm going to call on Dolores Trentadue.
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I want to say hi, Paul. Thanks for everything you guys are doing. Government's doing a great job. My question is not business related, but I'm hearing that Ontario has some kind of a treatment plan that could be coming before the vaccine. And I know it's maybe a ways away, the vaccine, but is there any talk of Ontario coming up with a treatment for this thing?
I know that both the federal government and provincial governments have been putting a lot of money aside to help with international efforts with respect to finding a vaccine. As far as treatment, I am not aware of anything other than the hunt for a vaccine, which I'm told is about months away. I know probably you heard anything other than what we're doing.
No, I haven't, to be honest. I haven't heard anything otherwise, but I think from our standpoint, it's just making sure we increase testing as much as possible as we reopen the economy, and we can contact trace all cases is the key to this right now as we move forward, I think. But in terms of that, I think we're all waiting for that still.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Wave your hand. Wave your hand. Oh, Dom, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, thank you to both of you on behalf of the Stouffville Chamber for joining us and spending so much time. I'm sure you're both tired of Zoom calls and conferences and looking forward to the long weekend, as kind of we all are.
Rob, just so you know, just had a daughter like a week ago, his first child. So So,
wow, congratulations on that. And maybe you want to join more Zoom calls so you're not doing diapers and stuff, right? So
yeah.
Yes,
that's excellent. So my question is very, very brief, just circling back to the whole face coverings and masks. And that question about it being mandatory, maybe not necessarily in public, but at least in places, even like grocery stores, where it's still sometimes difficult to have social distancing. And you're finding that, you know, a lot of seniors, in my case, I'm lucky, I can drop off groceries for my parents, my in-laws, all that, but they're getting squirrely too. They want to go out and start shopping now. Luckily, they can do so at a Longo's in Box Grove that is requiring masks and all of that fun stuff. But why don't we consider that to help the economy open a little quicker, and certain businesses ask and make that mandatory, even those surgical masks? Like a lot of my vendors that I deal with are requiring that of us. So my technicians, if they need to go in a data center now, they have to wear a mask. So, you know, we're a bit challenged in supporting that and finding that amount of masks for our techs. But just in general, why not make it more mandatory so we can kind of reopen quicker and maybe clamp down on the spread, and seniors don't feel so nervous about going out in the world again, because they're really the ones that we're doing the best job we can of protecting.
Yeah, Dominic, as I said earlier, the evidence on that has been a bit inconclusive as such. So I know both Ontario and the Federal Medical Officer of Health have recently said that, okay, look, there's no reason why you shouldn't wear it. We haven't mandated it, but having said that, the sectoral reviews that Minister McNaughton is doing, which will allow businesses to open up, and Minister Sarkaria, correct me if I'm wrong, it is being mandated in a lot of cases in order to allow you to actually do business. So, but nothing's been brought on the table still that we would force an order that all Ontarians, if you go out, would wear a mask. Look, I'll just say this. I know that especially the elderly, I have a father-in-law who's 90, and I deliver groceries to him at Pace. He lives at Pace. And last week, he called us and said, oh, you don't have to worry about it anymore, because I went all on his own. He went to his doctor and got the right to drive again. He had broken his leg. And, yes. So everybody's getting squirrely. Like they want to get out. So look, I'll say this: if you're on the road between 12 and 3 around Pace, maybe that's not the best time to drive, given my father-in-law's driving record. But I don't know. We just the evidence really just hasn't been there that it would help us open the economy any better. I don't know. Probably have any comments on that? I mean,
yeah, I could definitely comment on the part about the access to the PPE for businesses. So ontario.ca/PPE will give you a list of vendors that can currently supply you with the needed or whatever you might require. So surgical masks, face masks, N95s, face shields. We've actually set up a portal for that, and so I would, Dominic, direct you if in any case that you have some there's some issues getting that PPE for your business and some of your employees. More than happy to jump on that portal and get that. But I do think just in general, we've got to be better at producing PPE locally, domestically, and I think the Premier spoke to this a couple of weeks ago when we had a bit of a tussle with our friends south of the border. And I think that's going to give us an opportunity out of this crisis to really develop our critical supply chains right here in the province, our manufacturing, harness that, and then be able to produce much of that right here in the province of Ontario. So we never have to rely on any foreign entities or countries again for a critical supply of PPE and have that local domestic supply ready for us. But I think I agree with Paul on the evidence isn't just quite there for the government to be able to mandate that or to link conclusively to the reduction. But we want to still make sure that we have it available for businesses wherever needed. So ontario.ca/PPE is a site that you can use, and it's very efficient.
The other problem, Dominic, quite frankly, is that I've got an Italian nose, so to cover my nose and to keep it safe would require a lot of material, so there's really no point.
No, I hear you. Listen, I get it. It's just, it's a challenging time because we're also preparing to kind of ask some of our folks to come back to the office, and because of this lack of any evidence, Some of them come out and say, you know, things travel in the air, so everyone better be wearing a surgical mask even if they're in the office, even if we have them in separate offices or way beyond 6 feet apart. So it's a challenge for us employers to even now convince people to return to work in a certain way. We're an essential service because we're infrastructure providers, so we're already running around data centers and client sites, and a lot of our clients are manufacturers, so we get to observe the challenges they face. And they're trying to get their hands on all these wonderful things like, you know, enough hand sanitizer and everything else. And it's so frustrating because we know the answer. We know, you know, get hand sanitizer, get this, get wipes, and we can't get them. So it's a bit tough. And if you're a smaller business, it's even tougher to obtain that. And it can be pricey now too. That's the other thing that we're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
So thank you, though, for your response.
Well, to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm going to close it here. Is there anything either of you ministers would like to say in closing?
No, look, just thank you guys for everything that you've done. Stillwell's done a really good job, and the council has done good. York Region Council has done good, and everybody has been very respectful, which has put us in a spot where we can start opening things up. But we certainly get how anxious people are to get moving. I get that. So, Prabh, I don't know if you have
I just want to echo that. Thank you, everybody, and my apologies once again that we were a bit delayed in getting to this Zoom chat. But I'd love to follow up with Paul. He'll work with our office if there's any concerns on the landlord program that we're rolling out. We'll keep you guys up to date and in the loop on the changes as they come. And anything else as we look towards more supports in the future and how to build those. I think that the best way to do it is to keep the lines of communication over with our business community, and then be able to really build this economy up as we move forward over the next couple of weeks, months, and years. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And thanks to Paul. He's a great champion at Queen's Park. Keeps us all in check as the house leader. But it's always a great opportunity to help Paul, and he's been a great champion for the region at Queen's Park.
Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Minister Zakari and Calandra, for being here today. We certainly appreciate it. Hope we can do this again in another few weeks when we get a little further along, and you can provide us with further updates.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Karen. I appreciate it. And thank you all for coming online. I do appreciate it.